I have a motion. Any comments or corrections of that? Motion to approve minutes.
So moved.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Cool. Members of the public are welcome to provide comments to the board select on agenda topics scheduled for review and revoke comments electronically. So are we receiving comments electronically?
You can, as well as anybody's following us.
Be sent to the following email address: posdistribution@kmct.com. Of course, we can put in the meeting. Next item on the agenda. Are we adding that item to the agenda?
No, we're not.
Next item on the agenda, Linda is going to present to us the American Rescue Plan Funds program. Morning, Linda.
Good morning. Just an update from where we left off. There's been developments and things are constantly evolving, and new information and guidance is coming out. But the last time I provided an update, I shared that our total allocation for the town would be 5.9 million. At the time, the state had announced that they would give it in 2 installments. We would get about 2.9 million in fiscal year 21, and then the remaining 2.9 million in fiscal year 22. We did receive the first installment as promised on the 25th of June, just before the close of fiscal year. So we have that booked. We are currently setting it up separately in a grant fund until a decision is made where what the town decides to do. So we did receive that first tranche of the payment as discussed. The eligible uses, as I shared before, they could be used to support public health expenditures, to address negative impacts of COVID, the public health emergency. We could use it to replace lost revenue. Some are using it to provide premium pay for essential workers and those types of things. And I shared last time with the Board of Finance, you'll be approving the volunteer tax abatement as an example. That would be something that would qualify if we were to decide to use these funds for something in that regard, because that is premium pay to our volunteer first responders. And then you could use it to invest in sewer, water, and broadband types infrastructure. I also included in your packets, CCM has been doing a lot of work on this as well, just trying to understand and to provide guidance to communities. So you have this toolkit that they provided, which basically summarizes the 5 priority areas that you could use the funds for, but also includes information on what you can and provides a bit more specificity in terms of the individual projects that you can do. It also gives some guidance as far as process. What we're discovering in this process is that communities have been impacted differently, towns versus cities. And so each town is approaching it based on their individual situation. And so what works for Greenwich may not work for us, may not work for Norwalk. And therefore it's important for us as a community to just have our own process in determining how we allocate the funds, but we follow the guidance and the guidelines that have been provided by the Fed and by the state. And then maybe Kevin can share. There was an initial meeting, I believe it was organized by TDAC, that met in this room to kind of start that discussion, community dialogue in terms of how do we appropriate these funds. But that's kind of where we are. From a timings perspective, our auditors, depending on what we do with the funds, impacts how the funds get audited. So for example, if we were to say we're going to allocate X amount to replace lost revenue, then the auditors would need to test the lost revenues. Do they meet the test? Did we really lose? Can we really make that correlation that they were lost due to COVID? If we decide to use the funds towards specific projects, specific infrastructure, then they will look at that projects to see, does it determine what they audit and what test that they perform. So they are kind of waiting on us to provide some direction to them so that they know how to proceed. We have some time. They're here now. They've begun initial testing, but we typically don't conclude the audit until October-ish, November-ish, and it's presented in December. So we have some time to figure out and to provide guidance to them in terms of what we do and where we go with those funds. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
So under that is with respect to 21 fiscal years, the first 2.9 million.
Correct, because we've already received that as of this.
So just to follow up on that question,
should we have a decision as to what our priorities would be by, say, October of this year? Or I thought it seemed to me that we had a little bit of a,
No, you had time to
Yeah.
spend the money, but if we have an idea of what we think we're going to do, then to
okay,
let
so
to
the targets
target is about
ideally
that.
should be identified by October 2021.
At least the decision, not necessarily expenditure.
Right. And I believe that was a discussion that also took place at the Board of Finance last week, and I believe there's a group of Board of Finance members that's going to be discussing and providing some input to the first selectmen as well.
So Kevin, I guess this question, are you kind of having TDAC run this process?
Not at all, no. I think last week, the TDEC committee, together with the Chamber of Commerce and the Community Foundation, had a forum to hear from the nonprofits and business community. That was the beginning of the process to assess community needs. We discussed with the Board of Finance last week that they need to identify governmental needs, as well as the town council. Town council will discuss this on the
Tomorrow.
forum. So we began a process. We're listening and we're examining what other community needs. Because it's a federal grant funds, they've been put into a grant account, not into the general fund. I'm not sure the decisions will be made by November, October so much because the first tranche is only half the money. Right? But what's the unified federal audit? We have to be able to show.
Right. So the single audit is obviously because we received the money, so they're going to show up as receivables because we have the money. But because these are federal dollars, they do qualify, and because of the dollar value, they would qualify regardless. But all of these funds for all communities, I think the feds actually lowered the threshold to 300,000. So even if you received as little as 300,000, they would have to be audited under the single audit of the federal. So in that regard, that piece of the audit, because we've received the monies, we've booked them in a grant account, we've done what we need to do. So they will be part of this year's single audit of the feds. The spending was probably not going to be a FY21 item.
The spending
Will not be a FY21
Right.
item because we didn't spend it by the end of the fiscal year.
And we have 3 years to spend it.
We do have until 2024.
So the auditors, I would guess, are not necessarily expecting us to set the priorities by October. which
No, not
is really
necessarily.
more, we received it, it's in a grant fund, and there's work being done to consider how the monies would be expended.
If there's some direction in terms of some communities are doing buckets, we're going to provide some X percentage for relief, X percentage for new infrastructure. If there's that type of guidance, because the auditors would include that in their comments.
In their comments, right? Yeah.
In your estimation for June 30th, 2021, how much revenue has the town lost because of COVID-19?
We ran some numbers, and this is based on the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, provided some guidance, a toolkit, and a calculator to do it. So the way that the guidance from the Treasury is to identify revenues that you feel that were impacted by COVID, identify the last fiscal year pre-COVID. So in our case would be FY19. And then from that, take those revenues and add a 4.1% growth rate. They pick the 4.1%. And so then you compare what would our revenues have been had they grown 4.1% annually. And then you compare that with what you actually received, and then the delta is the loss. And so when we looked in Canaan, we identified 3 revenue sources that you could make a strong argument that they were impacted by COVID. First one was the rec department, because we shut down the program, and so we did lose recreation revenues. Parking, because of the decisions of the parking fees, so that was one. And then the town does have a number of properties that we rent that go into the movie theater is a good example, movie fund. We have a number of tenants in town that we provided a rent holiday because of COVID, and so we've identified what those are. So if you add those up, the projected loss is about 3.1 million. The general fund, the recreation was about 560,000. Parking, we lost about 1.9 million. And then in the railroad and the rental funds, about 600,000 or so. So it comes to about 3.
No, I make a point, you know, if you look at the city of Stanford, they lost revenues, and as a result, which they cut their education budget substantially. And other budgets. We fortunately didn't have to cut budgets, and ironically, for example, parking garages. But we don't really have the parking lots are empty, we're not really losing anything. And on the other hand, we did lose some money.
It's a money.
Well, I don't, but we did lose some money that didn't go to the parking lot. The percentage of our access to the parking lot. So parking could be something we want to focus on. That the governmental needs will be focused on other advance. The town council may decide to have a public hearing. I'm going to be looking at our neighbors to see what they're doing. But the whole point is, the government expects you to send these funds on things that address COVID-related needs that we created. I think we do have COVID-related needs now.
I don't disagree, but again, as I said earlier, I do think, I think, Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not inappropriate to apply these funds to lost revenue directly related. I think you just described those 3 incidents directly related to COVID.
Correct. Applying to lost revenue is the only item that you can actually go back in time. But all of the other criteria, they're really looking to stimulate the economy. New additional spending on things that enhance or relate to COVID expenses. The only thing that you could look back is lost revenue, but all new expenditures.
At the end of the day, too, I think this board should be making recommendations once we further analysis. See the kinds of results we're getting, assessing. And then I think this is why should be town council decision. That's the indication is to consider legislative action. Side where to spend federal grant dollars. So.
Just coordinating sort of all of the folks that are working on this, TDAC, the town council, so it's like one oversight to you. Okay, so or the board of.
You know, maybe we should create a.
I think it's like a board, right?
Yeah, well, you guys are welcome to coordinate too. But we're just beginning this process. And, but again, I think we have 60 days to, you know, in September with the town council, the board of finance will come back with recommendation for governmental needs. And you know, the nonprofits have stepped forward, the arts have stepped forward, so we have needs, and so yeah, nothing is set in stone, nothing is predetermined. It's a process. I'll be curious to see what our neighbors do. I think we'll be interested.
But then you're engaging with Westcog about.
Westcott, that's what Westcott is for.
Right, right.
We have a Thursday in Richmond, we will talk about this.
So I just 2 things. One, this particular toolkit that Linda provided, I think is very handy. And if it hasn't done so already, you may make sure that those who are looking into this get a copy of it, maybe post it on our town website, because I think it's very helpful. And there's also a piece here that suggests that communications about that process that we're taking on as a town being put up, you know, in some way, shape, or form, perhaps on the website. I'd recommend, much the same way you did for COVID. We've got that little box, and it goes directly into this is what we're considering. These are the funds that we have available to us. These are our priorities, etc. So that's one recommendation that came out of the toolkit.
So the town council will discuss this by.
Yes, so town council will have that on their packets, and Board of Finance has it, but we will follow up on the website.
Great.
And we sent that to the nonprofits and the community for the forum last week. So that covers that topic. The rest of the agenda, Cheryl Jones,
Can I just do one interruption? I don't know whether you have plans to say this, but I don't know how long you're saying about this, Linda, but Linda just recently got nominated to be on the board of the GFOA. And I wanted to congratulate him because I think on behalf of all of us, we just think you're doing a terrific job, and it's now recognized by a nationwide body of governmental financial organization. You're on the executive board there, and I think it not only is that a great reflection on our town, but also on your professional career. So congratulations. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that on the agenda.
I skipped over that. Congratulations on it. We're going next to relief No, we're going next to the volunteer taxpayer, sorry.
So you do have in front of you, as I mentioned, we brought a couple of names last week. These are volunteers of EMS. And we are doing another tranche of payments for them. And I think the town ordinance reads as a tax abatement. We're actually providing tax credit. In that we cut a check for them to be applied towards their taxes, and these checks are sent directly to the tax collector of the towns of residents. And so you have a list of names and the second batch of payments for on their behalf. So there's an incentive for what they do. They provide a great service to this country. We do need your approval because we are kind of checks.
Any questions for Linda?
So Linda, can you just, so this is in addition to the list that you shared with us last month, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so a couple additional names.
Couple of additional names. So the way that the process, they, and excuse me for not having the exact criteria, but the ordinance sets the criteria that the fire department and EMS have a criteria of who is eligible to receive. They are to certify that list by March. And so we received the certified list of eligible individuals back in March, X number of hours, X years in service and so forth. And so there's a list, eligible list. So receive that list in March. The tax bills don't go out until June or July in most towns. And that's why you're seeing the names now once the tax bills are out, because this is for their taxes that are due July and January.
Are we one of the few towns that actually do these tax credits for volunteers, or?
No, we are actually one of the last towns to get on the list, because other towns have been doing it way before us. Norwalk is doing it, Greenwich, Darien, most of our neighboring towns.
I see. Okay.
Darien has an all volunteer.
Yeah, that I know, correct, yeah. And so the credit process that we engage in, where we cut the check to either the town of New Canaan, if the residents here, or elsewhere. Okay, all right.
Yes.
That's similar.
That is very similar, and it's modeled after, because there's a state statute that gives the guidance on the amount. So the number is set by state. It used to be 1,500 beginning July 1 this year. They upped it to 2,000, and so that's the limit that the state has set. So whatever the state sets, that's what we follow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, it's one of the few areas where we lag behind. So it's a great program. I see my friend Mr. Malazzi on there, because he's spent a lot of time as for 30 years as a volunteer firefighter. So thank you.
So we're gonna vote on this.
Yes.
I move we approve the review.
Volunteer.
Property tax base and other benefits for volunteers. The council details around our coverage. And a second.
Second.
All good.
Aye.
That's approved. Now we have show jobs and it's cheap. Okay. Fourth.
Good morning.
Thanks.
We would like to present Chris Isaacs to you as our newest hire. He has been a volunteer for 11 years with the New Canaan Fire Department. The commission did their interviews and put him forward. Definitely, if you have anything you would like to add.
Yeah, Chris has been an active volunteer for almost 11 years. We're trying to fill a vacancy. One of our lieutenants is retiring, and we will be overstaffed for 2 months. And if we send somebody to the academy relatively quickly, we would be understaffed for 8 months. So it's an easy decision to make to get this guy to the academy. He'll start August 30th and graduate around December 10th, and we'll put him online. And we're looking forward to it. We were very lucky that the past 3 hires have all been volunteers from the New Canaan Fire Company, and we're very pleased with this choice that the commission made. We're just looking for your approval to hire him.
How much more does a volunteer learn at the academy? You already said volunteer.
It's in the CBA that all new hires go to the Connecticut Fire Academy and get trained.
It's a good thing.
Even though you've been a college
Yes.
for a long
I mean, even if he was a paid fireman in another city and came to New Canaan, we would send him to the academy. just because there's new methods and tools and stuff, and it's physical training, and it's like boot camp. I mean, when they come out, they're pretty sharp, they're in good shape.
Very good. Sounds like a good plan.
He's a terrific guy and a terrific guy. This is a testament to having a body, fire, just because it's a natural feeder for the business.
It is.
And on that point, that in the last year, I said.
This
3
is our third,
volunteers
yeah.
have become permanent fire. And so what are we doing to recruit more volunteers so that we can keep that bench?
COVID really kind of slowed things down, but there is an effort to recruit and retain our volunteers, and this is one way of doing it, that they become eligible or get trained to become firefighters, career firefighters. And we're looking into what we're going to do in the future, which is with our recruitment. The volunteers basically have been taking care of that themselves, and we're in good shape right now.
It sounds like a good proposal for ARPA funds.
They are aware of it. They are aware that their funding is available.
I think everybody in town is aware of
Trucks. When is the new truck arrive?
We're hoping in October, November. It's in paint right now. It's the chassis is done, the body's done, and they're painting it, and they have to reassemble it. It's a small shop. It's handmade, and I'll send you pictures as soon as I get new pictures. Last time I saw it, was all in primer. So it's we're getting there.
Okay, I move we approve this request from the chairman of the fire commission to hire fire commission to hire Mr. Isaac as a full-time firefighter. Do I have a second?
Second year.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day.
John,
Thanks, Cheryl. Oh, we have one more.
I've got one more. I would
Mr. Parks.
like to present Michael Zeglotti. This year, the Board of Finance approved a part-time position for John Howe to start July 1st. So we put an ad out, we interviewed, and we would like to present Michael. He does have a CDL. He has experience snow plowing, landscaping, and we feel he would be a good addition as a part-time employee.
Looks like a great employee. How many applications were received?
13.
So we're very excited, especially a year like this with all the rain we've been having. Everything's growing like it's springtime.
Right.
And we feel that right now everything looks unkempt, and we don't like that in July. So
How many hours does a part-time employee work?
up to 30,
30 is.
up to 30,
I see.
but then, yeah,
I think it'll, depending on their busy time and.
Yeah.
it'll go up
busy
and down.
time, weather,
Right.
we should be very flexible on days and works.
Thank you.
I move we approve this request from the director of the resources affairs, Michael. Oh,
Zegletti,
should
Zegletti.
say that junior, a part-time driver, part-time. That's it.
Second.
That's it. Favor? Aye. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to IT. Jim Valley with twins.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
good, yourself.
He's only, person here from IT this week.
We have Brian too. It's working.
He's already in charge.
Yeah,
Good news. Sure. Go ahead, Tim. This is the contract with Presidio.
Presidio for email, a renewal, it's an annual for all our 320 accounts for service and support.
The more accounts we have, the average price goes down.
It's $3.95 per month per account. So
How many accounts?
320,
Is
20. And pretty much have all 320 filled, with town email addresses. Have maybe usually keep 5 spares because all of a sudden, we want to have a new one for this, and so it changes up and down.
So that includes boards and commissions.
Boards, commissions, anything, from parking payments to new candidate info or one of those.
Does Board of Education have a separate contract?
Yeah, they do stuff. They actually use Google. We use Microsoft.
I see.
It's part of their curriculum G Suite.
So Can you speak to the cybersecurity? I think there was an effort, maybe 1 or 2 months ago, that we were going to do authentication. And how's that working? Is that involved in any of this?
In fact, we just did there's two parts of it. One, there's 2 form factor for all our town employees if they're working remote or accessing outside of town. We've just implemented that. And then we've just gotten town employees done. And now we're moving to the next phase, which is the board's information numbers as well. So everyone will be 2 form factor for both remote access and town information, both email and desktops and files.
And you feel that Presidio, I guess, especially for the Microsoft, and there's been some issues with cybersecurity and breaking into the Microsoft, are we comfortable with?
Correct. That mostly all those hacks were from people who have email hosted on premise,
Yeah.
where we're a cloud-based solution, so it's different. So that was not affected by those China attacks with any cloud solution, just on premise. Has to do with their servers being patched and updated and stuff like that, and loopholes were done
We
all
don't
the
have to
time.
worry about that when we're on the
Correct.
cloud.
It's
Correct.
one of the benefits of that.
Thank you.
So the past couple of weeks, we've had 2 instances where we're made up an email address with my name. It's
Yeah.
really efficient. It's not that they have hacked our system. But
Correct.
they make the email address. And people, because it's coming to me, it's probably me, so it's crazy.
I know it's not.
No, yeah, just always remember, anything
wasn't either.
anything town related will not have that yellow bar saying it's from the outside world.
So we have to concentrate on people. It's quite valid. Okay. I move we approve this request from IT to distribute that solution to 15,168. Maintain our 320 email accounts. For a second. Second, further discussion. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to number 8. There's 5 or 6 contracts under $10,000. Any questions about those?
So I just have one question on this consider here.
Yeah.
So Gaggle, the archiving services renewal. I think we've a couple times we've actually just approved bills for archiving. This is for what particular?
This actually is for all our email archives. So everything that is historically, actually, we go back quite a few years. Any of the email is captured, saved, and archived as a service we use. And it's been able to, we can recover for FOII or other purposes. We can look up all that information.
It's interesting. It's not part of the.
We originally did have it combined
Yeah.
with Microsoft,
Yeah.
and actually the Gaggle tool is much more effective than the Microsoft one. And the cost is really the same if it was when we had it bundled together.
Okay.
And maybe if I can tell you which one's better or worse, but
Thank you.
We vote on these?
No.
Okay. We will be throwing comments. Question about it. Will we approve of these? Right, comments? Thank you, Jim. Second. Discussion. All in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry, this one. So this was as of fiscal year close of June 30th. So we start fresh with a new report going forward. Okay, so this is the full year. Okay. Thank you.
There's a second.
Second.
All in favor? That brings, well, before we go into executive session, I'll make comments. Yesterday, we had the pleasure of having Governor Lalonde here at Grace Farms. They had a ceremony, a bill signing ceremony on the government procurement bill that Senator Haskell, Senator Bill Haskell's committee. So the governor's operating officer, Josh Cavallo, was with, well, the higher in the procurement area in Stanford University. Anyway, so it was a nice ceremony. They, governor in particular, wanted to thank Grace Farms for the great work they did last spring with the PPP procurement from China that really helped our first responders and our hospitals, our facilities. A number that probably counts. And that distribution was done by our fire company number one, so it's great recognition of their work. And it's good to have it done. On the COVID front, we have 4 or 5 positive cases a week. Of 2 kinds, one unvaccinated people. None reported get very sick, but were hospitalized in the area. And then people who were vaccinated but had traveled. Traveling to areas of higher risk. And the governor indicated yesterday, this Delta virus is a concern. Stock market yesterday, Carla. So we don't know, Connecticut is among the highest in the country as far as vaccinations, and Canada is the highest in Canada, actually. So we should feel safe in Canada. But
Okay, what's our rate as of today?
rate, actually. Oh, but at the different age brackets, our overall rate.
That's our point.
But that's the total. But actually, when you look at the rate that includes, vaccinated, it's lower, but the unvaccinated would not eligible. But I talked to the governor yesterday about the school reopening and whether or not he's going to require masks. The governor's order, emergency powers were extended as of today. It was kind of 20th. It was like you're going to need them to make some further calls on the response to the pandemic. So that was a good session. We're issuing a memo on meetings, so that we're going to have 3 varieties of meetings in person. Okay. Hybrid meetings where a member of the board or commission can be remote and vote, and then a virtual meeting on Zoom where nobody's present in person.
And this will apply to all boards, commissions.
Yes, because
Committees.
this is pursuant to legislation that the Assembly adopted for next April 22nd or something, and then they're going to turn it forward. They have to change FOIA laws and some other laws to all this problem. So, other than that, that's what I have. And as I said, Linda's going to come back to talk to us about the executive session item. Linda, congratulations again, Linda. I'm going to put in the executive board. She didn't go ahead. What else that comes?
Just 2 things on COVID. Are we advising that anybody gets tested, wherever they might get tested, does the results come directly to our health director, or do they have to identify it directly?
No, they always have. That's why all of our test results last year.
Wherever they come in, wherever they're tested.
They list 4684 always because their permanent addresses, their college did.
Right.
Last year, and anybody traveling anywhere in the country.
So that's
The
continuing.
results come back to Connecticut, and they come back to us.
And then we contact.
They don't come back, the state is not releasing the variant information, either to the health departments or to the individual. So if you think you're positive because of Delta variant, you can't find that out.
And just one other thing, I want to wish my colleagues from the party, all those who are running tonight, the caucus, best wishes. Hope you have a good turnout, good outcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to go into executive session. We may take a vote when we leave executive session, and but we will conclude the meeting and adjourn this right after the executive session. Okay, so having left executive session at 9:47, we will reconvene the regular scheduled meeting for Selectmen July 20th. We had an update on potential real estate transactions, and but we did not need to take a vote. So that ends our session. I'll have a return.
Second.
All in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you.